It's Monday, May 22nd, 2006 at 5:30 p.m. This is a meeting of the Ventura County Air Pollution Control District Hearing Board, where we're hearing petition number 782, petition of the Air Pollution Control Officer for a stipulated conditional order of abatement against the United Water Conservation District, United Water, for violating District Rule 10, permits required, District Rule 74.9, stationary internal combustion engines, and District Rule 26.2, new source review requirements. Two members of the board are absent, Mr. Gasparino and Dr. Shackman, but we have a quorum, Mr. Stubblefield, Ms. Neiswender, and myself, Stephen Herlock, so we're going to proceed. The board is represented by our counsel, Mr. Roberto Oriano. The district is represented by Mr. Duval and the district counsel, Robert Kwong. Did I get that right, Robert? Yes. Could the representatives of United introduce yourselves with your names and your functions, your positions?
My name is Tony Blankenship. I'm the operations assistant.
And I'm John Conlon from United Water Conservation District. I'm the lead operator and oversee the PDP system.
Okay. Thank you. Roberta, could you administer the oath?
You please stand and raise your right hands. Do you and each of you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give and the matters now pending before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
Thank you. This petition is a petition of the Air Pollution Control Officer, and so we'll ask the district to present their case to start things off.
Thank you. For the record, I'm Keith Duval, representing the Air Pollution Control District, and we're here tonight petitioning for stipulated order of abatement against United Water Conservation District. United Water operates 5 engines, natural gas-fired engines in the Oxnard Plain area. The engines are used to pump water to farming operations. On April 13th, back up just a moment. Previously, under our District Rule 23 exemptions from permit, internal combustion engines used for pumping of agricultural water were exempt from permit. In April 2004, the Air Pollution Control District adopted a revision to Rule 23 that eliminated that exemption, thus requiring these engines that United Water operates to obtain permits from the Air District. Any engines that were required to obtain a permit pursuant to this rule change would have to meet the appropriate emission limits of our District Rule 74.9 for stationary internal combustion engines. One of our new source review rules, Rule 26.3, provides an exemption from best available control technology for any emissions unit which is required to obtain a permit from a district rule due to a revision to Rule 23, provided the application for permit to operate is submitted no later than 1 year after the date on which the revision to Rule 23 became effective. Therefore, United Water had to submit its permit applications for their engines by July 12th, 2005, in order for those engines to be exempt from Rule 26.3. On July 29th, 2005, United Water submitted permit to operate applications for the 5 engines. So they submitted their applications after the exemption date. In September 2005, the district notified United Water that the 5 applications were incomplete because they would not comply with the requirement for best available control technology, and the engines may require the engines may require emission offsets for oxides of nitrogen. Therefore, United Water was unable to obtain a permit to operate from the district. After the engineering division of the Air District had some discussions with United Water decided that they would electrify these 5 engines. United Water expects to have all 5 engines electrified by July 1st of 2008. Therefore, in order for United Water to be able to legally operate these engines between now and the time that they are electrified, United Water does need relief of some sort because your board cannot grant a variance from the requirement to obtain a permit to operate. We felt it was the best mechanism for us to proceed with a stipulated order of abatement that would prohibit their operation of the 5 engines unless they met certain requirements. And in the draft order, the proposed order that we've submitted for your consideration, we do have some timing requirements for United Water to install the various engines, and it is on a phased-in schedule with a final compliance date of July 1st, 2008. We are requesting that United Water maintain records on how frequently they operate those engines and provide those records to us. One proposed change that we have to that order is in a memo that I gave you just recently. The draft order proposes that they keep records on the natural gas consumed by each of the engines, and we would recommend that that be changed to a requirement to keep records of the hours of operation. I've talked to United Water representatives about this, and they're in agreement. They do keep records, I believe, monthly on these engines, hours of operation of the engines, so this would not be a problem for them to implement. With that, I'll conclude my comments and take questions.
Okay, thank you. Members of the board, questions for you?
I'm a little confused on what the difference would be had they applied.
That was my question.
Oh, good. See, had they applied timely, what would the difference be as we sit here today?
If they would have applied timely, they would still have been required to install emission controls on the engines because that's a requirement of our Rule 74.9 for stationary internal combustion engines. So they would have had to have installed controls on each of the 5 engines. That 1-year deadline, what that put them into the category of was having to provide emission offsets. If they would have come in if they would have come in before July 12th of 2005, they would not have been required to provide emission offsets based on the historical operation of the engines. Because they missed that deadline, they came in 1 year after the implementation date. They therefore would have been required to provide emission offsets for those engines. So that's where that 1-year date comes in, and that, really missing it by 2 weeks.
There are a couple places in the staff report in which you indicate that the 5 engines have not been source tested. 2 questions.
Yes.
Why? And would that be helpful in establishing proper mitigation?
Well, there was, up until the revision to Rule 23 became effective, there was never a requirement for them to conduct any emissions testing. They were exempt from permitting and therefore emission control requirements. So there was no requirement for them to test. Had they decided to put emission controls on, we would have required emission testing after the controls were installed to verify the efficiency and that they met the proper emission standards. The estimated, we have estimated the emissions. Let me back up. Our engineering division estimated the emissions from the engines based on standard emission factors from EPA, which over the years we've seen are fairly accurate, pretty good numbers. They're well-established numbers. So we didn't see at this time a need to require emissions testing. And then United Water made the decision to electrify the engines. So we decided at that point that testing wouldn't be necessary since they were heading down a path of eliminating the engines altogether.
And in the staff report at paragraph 10, I guess it's G10, page 5, it says that because United is proposing electrification, the cost of installing the equipment on the engines would exceed the district standards for cost effectiveness. What are the district standards for cost effectiveness?
For oxides of nitrogen, which the emission controls would apply to, it's $18,000 per ton. And that's a number that's been established by the Air Pollution Control Board a number of years ago.
And maybe this is a question better asked to the district, but I mean to United. But what is going to be the cost of transferring these engines over from gas-fired to electrified?
I'll let United Water speak to that question.
We did some preliminary selection of different types of equipment that we would need in the engineering involved, and our assessment is coming out to about $750,000 to convert all 5 engines.
I have no more questions.
My question was answered. Thank you.
I'd like to follow up on something that came up in your response to Ms. Neiswander's question. You mentioned offsets in the context of timely versus not timely. There's nothing in the order about offsets. Do offsets play a role in this case somehow?
No, because we will not be issuing permits for these engines, they're not required to, and they won't be required to provide emission offsets.
I had a question for the district, if relative to some gaps in the timeline.
Okay.
From July to September, and then from September till now, especially the second one, seems like a rather big gap. Can you kind of explain that timeline and why those gaps were there?
Well, I believe from the time in July when they submitted their permit application to the district, they submitted 5 permit applications to our engineering division for review, and so I think it took a period of time for the district to review the applications, determine what the shortcomings were, and then apparently in September we notified United Water that their applications were incomplete because of the several shortcomings. So it was, I think, really a matter of the district reviewing the applications. I wasn't involved in the process. I don't know if there was some discussion or correspondence in the interim with United Water.
And what's been going on from that notification until March of this year?
I think shortly after September 2005, there was discussions between United Water and the district about electrification, and Mr. Blankenship might be able to fill in some of the gaps here. And then it was maybe sometime in November when I was notified that they had the engines operating without permits and that we needed to take some course of action to get them either on a variance, which they couldn't get, or a stipulated order of abatement. So we, at that time, started progressing towards the stipulated order of abatement.
I wanted to talk about the findings a little bit. I'm looking at Rule 123B. It says that no order for abatement shall be granted unless the hearing board makes all of the following findings. One, that the respondent is in violation of the mentioned sections or of any rule, regulation, or order of the district. And in the stipulated order, you list rules. You list Rule 10, operating without a permit, which I think I can find that without a problem, and I think it's Rule 23. But I have trouble with the Rule 74-9 because it seems that all you can say is that the engines probably would not meet some requirements of that rule. And maybe you could explain to me, if you can help us to make that finding with respect to Rule 74-9, I'm having trouble.
Okay, I'll give it a try. The type of engine that United Water is operating, they've got two different types of engines. Those types of engines, we have never seen that those engines have been capable of meeting the emission limitations specified in Rule 74.9. We've never had anybody come in with test data to show that an uncontrolled engine met the limits specified in Rule 74.9. We have seen that engines with catalytic converters do meet the limits, in many cases just barely, and some by a good margin. I would say that it would be very good engineering judgment to say that with greater than 99% assurance that those engines would not meet the emission standards as they're currently operated.
I understand that, and I was kind of guessing that would be your response. And this board doesn't follow strict rules of evidence, but this seems to me like lack of. Usually, the burden would be on the district to prove that they don't, and you're saying that this kind of engine never has. I just have trouble with that particular finding, but not with finding that they're in violation. I don't know. But maybe I could ask for comments from the other board members on this particular issue. If we go into the page 5 of the petition, item 3, it talks about, among other things, Rule 74.9 requires, and because the engines are uncontrolled, it is not likely that they would comply with the NOx emission limits. And that's, I don't have any argument with that. And you say something similar somewhere in the proposed order. But to to ask, to find that they're absolutely in violation of Rule 74.9. I just have a little bit of a problem with that. Mr. Oriano, can you help me there?
Well, I think I can help. In Health and Safety Code, Section 42451, A requires the findings, but subdivision B says that if it's by stipulation of the parties, then the hearing board can make the order for abatement without making the findings required, as long as you provide an explanation of the reasons why. And also, there is obviously a violation of the rule requiring a permit. So you have enough to do it just on the basis of the violation of the failure to have a permit for the engines.
I agree with what you said. I would prefer not to use Part B of that rule, because then we have to provide a written explanation about why we're not doing the findings. I can do the findings, make the findings. I just have trouble finding that they're in violation of Rule 74.9. Not that they're in violation of rules. And I'm wondering if it would be out of line, or if the district would have a problem if that part of the finding would be deleted from the proposed order. But in particular, the part on page 3, item 13, that says, and 3, District Rule number 74.9. I realize it's in the stipulated conditional order, which means the district and United have probably agreed on it.
Well, if I may,
Yeah.
and maybe we can just turn to United at this point and say, can we stipulate to the fact that these engines are not going to meet the 74.9 requirements?
Well, I can't say yes or no, but the odds are that they probably would not.
Yeah, the way that it's worded on page 5 of the staff report, it indicates that it is not likely the engines would
Yeah.
agree. And
These engines are variable speed engines, so if they came online and was just idling, they may, but they are a pressure demand system, so based on demand, they would go from an idle to full speed.
Okay. Let me ask the district, is there any way that they can be found or in violation of 74.9 without a source test?
No.
Then I don't think I can make that finding.
We could strike it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
where are we striking this specifically, if you would,
It's on the proposed order,
on page?
page 3, item 13.
So just strike that last.
But just put a period after requirements. Is the district is okay with that?
Yes, we are.
But as long as we're talking about findings, let's look at the rest. No, let's look at the rest of them and make sure that we, the board, can make the findings that are required by Rule 123B.
Similar related issue. Contact relations.
On page 5 of the findings of fact, number 3, excuse me. Oh, I lost it. Where was it? Yeah, okay, on page 4, excuse me, at the bottom there, number 8, it says calculations by the district permit staff indicates that for permitting purposes, the NOx emissions for United's waters are as follows. So I had the same question about that. Are these calculations based on historical consumption
Yes, the
throughput over so many hours of operation a year?
The estimated NOx emissions are based upon historical hours of operation of the engines. I believe it's an average of the last 5 years, plus 20%. And then with that, we use the standard EPA emission factors to derive the NOx emissions that are shown.
So this is sort of is this sort of a default calculation that the district relies upon if there is no exact data available?
Yes, it is.
Sort of a rule of thumb?
Pretty good engineer. I would say there's a good engineering background to it.
And it's been pretty reliable
Yes.
in the past? Okay, thank you.
Let me go back to the findings, because we're being asked to make these findings. I think we've cleared up that I don't have any problems making the findings that they're in violation. The second is that the order of abatement will not constitute a taking of property. I don't have any problem with that one, because we're not shutting down or curtailing their business. And item 3, that if the order of abatement results in the closing or elimination of an otherwise lawful business, which it doesn't, so I think we can make, I can make those 3 findings without any problem. I don't have any further questions of the district, but does the respondent have any questions or comments to the district?
Not at this time. I think we've had several conversations over the last few months to discuss this issue.
Thank you. I'm going to give the board members the opportunity to ask United questions, and possibly the district to ask them questions. Do you have any kind of a statement you'd like to make before that?
No, I'll answer the questions, and then if I feel a statement's needed after that, I'll speak up.
Board have any questions of the respondent?
We're talking about 5 pumps here, 5 generators. How many are there total?
We only have 5 engines out on the system. They run well sites, and the gas engines operate the wells, and they
Right.
meet a pressure demand system for.
So these are the 5 engines that pump water out of Fox Canyon
Out of Fox Canyon, that is correct.
for the city of Oxnard?
Not for the city of Oxnard, for the
For-
Oxnard Plain farmers.
Okay,
It's strictly ag.
okay.
That's part of why we didn't get these proceedings done sooner, is because we were still under the understanding that we had an exemption on the engines. It wasn't until we accidentally ran into one of the APCD representatives, and he said, well, how's it going on changing your engines over? And we said, well, what are you talking about? So that's why we were late meeting our deadline.
Thank you.
I was about to ask you, and I think you just answered. Tell me again why you didn't get the permits to operate in on time?
The engines were always exempt. So the engines have been out there since 1983. And they were exempt under public health regulations. And when we were asked if we had got our permits for the PTP engines, we said, no, they're ag exempt. And so then we went into several conversations with Kirby I never can say his last name. Zozula, on the argument on whether or not these were exempt engines or not exempt engines. And it wasn't until Kirby was able to show us where AB 700, which was a Senator Flores bill, actually changed the regulation, give the districts the ability to remove the exemption, and here we are. We did go back and look and see when we received a letter from the district on the exemption being removed, and at that time, it was at the exact same time as all the paperwork was coming out for diesel engine permitting. And it was tied in, there was 2 titles on it. Matter of fact, I got the title right here. It said, important notice for water agencies, permits required for irrigation pump engines and emergency diesel engines. Well, we were in the process of permitting all of our diesel engines, so unfortunately, we read right over the fact that it said irrigation pumps. And thus far, we permitted all of our diesel emergency engines and did not permit the irrigation pumps.
Thank you.
Mr. Duval, it's the district's position that none of these 5 engines, that their NOx emissions or any of their other emissions are a public health nuisance or hazard?
No, they're natural gas fired, so we don't have to worry about diesel air toxic contaminants.
All right. Thank you.
I had a question for the water district. In page 5 of the proposed stipulated conditional order, it stipulated that your budget will include appropriations for the conversions in the 2 years. You're on a July to June fiscal year?
That is correct.
Is appropriations adequate? I know different budget cycles, appropriations means one thing and approval means something else. Does that do it? Does that put the money in your budget?
Okay. With conversations and the meetings we've had with the APCD representatives, I have gone to the board, presented this to the board, our United Waters board, on 3 different occasions, and we have met, and the board has authorized the movement of a bond issue for $750,000 to put this project in starting as July of this coming year.
But that's not a voter-approved bond, that's just the district issues a bond?
The district will issue, well, it's a combination. It's one, we didn't really issue a bond, I shouldn't have said that. What we did was we refinanced a bond that we had and got the money that direction. And then some of it will be charged to our customers. We'll probably raise our rates to charge about $250,000 of it to the customers, and then eventually the customers will repay the money that we're pulling off the bond.
Okay, I had another question. Could be to either, but I'll pose it to you. On the same page, item 2 talks about your design and drawings. And it says, no later than November 30th, United Water shall hire an electrical engineering firm to design the conversion project and receive final drawings. The way I read this, you will have hired this contractor somewhat ahead of that, so you receive the drawings by November 30th. Is that how you interpret item 2 on page 5?
Our plans are to, in July 1, once the budget is approved and the funds are available, we will go out and search for an electrical engineering firm to give bids on design, determine which engineering firm best offers a viable project for us, and then start project with them, getting bids on having them the cost of their actual design. And that's what I'm hoping to have accomplished by the November 30th. If I have that accomplished by the November 30th, I'm figuring somewhere around February, March, after we've ordered our equipment, construction could probably start on the first 1 or 2. We're going to have to do this one at a time because we are a demand system and we have to supply our customers with water.
Do you see any difficulty having 2 engines replaced by June 30th, 2007?
It's going to be tight. This is a very aggressive program here to get all 5 engines converted in 2 years. Yes, I think we can do it, but it's going to be very tight.
This is as I understand it, this is a stipulated order that if it's not met, is probably would not allow variance to be approved by this board, which means that if you don't do it, you start paying fines. Is that correct?
I realize that, and come July of 2008, if I'm not done with it, I'll probably be looking for another job.
I don't have any further questions. Does the district have any questions for the respondent?
No questions.
I want to ask Mr. Herlich's question a different way. Is there any chance that this timeline could be derailed by?
Yes, there are several ways it could be derailed.
Give me
One,
some examples.
we're not just going electric, we're going VFDs. So we have to go VFDs to
What
be
does
able
that
to.
mean?
VFD means variable frequency drive controllers. And those are hooked or attached to the motors, and that controls the speed at which the electric pumps can run. Because we are a demand system, it's very difficult to bring on a constant speed pump because you overpressurize the pipeline or you underpressurize the pipeline, depending on one or the other is not on. So the variable speed. So we will have some delays in ordering on the VFDs once they're determined what it is. Most of our delays is going to be in design and actual ordering equipment. Construction, I think we'll be able to move along, but yes, we could hit some stumbling stones.
Well, let me ask the district then. May I ask the district a question? Does that mean that if they fail to meet this timeline that they're going to agree to in writing, they're going to pay $25,000 a day?
Well,
Or is that only if it's beyond their, it was within their
the
control?
$25,000 per day is only for intentional or negligent failure. And I would like to propose that if they get down towards the end and they get in a bind, that we would agree to come back and consider for your board, or bring back to your board for consideration an extension of the final compliance date.
But basically, you think this is doable, correct?
Well, let's put it this way. When we first started discussing, I was asking for 5 years, and where I could convert one a year. We've kind of come down to 2. 3 would be an absolute drop dead. Yes, we could absolutely do it in 3. We have a very good chance of doing it in 2. But we will keep the district apprised on our progress all the way. But if I hear that I can have a little bit more than 2 years, it'll make me feel a lot more comfortable.
Mr. Ehrlich, don't think you have extra time. We really don't like giving people time. I've watched us do this over and over again, so don't even go there. Although Mr. Duval is a very reasonable person, we are not. And we would much prefer if you, once you've signed this judgment, we're expecting you, this order, we're expecting you to keep to the schedule. At least I am, certainly.
You guys know we're not in compliance for NOx in this county, right?
Yes,
State and federal standards.
yes.
I'll second what Ms. Nicewinder said, but add the additional comment that especially so if the reasons for failure to meet schedule are financial. That's, if the price goes up, I think the district and their customers are just going to have to eat it, in my opinion.
Can I say one thing? We could have decided to go with catalytic converters and air ratio, fuel ratio controllers. It would have been a lot cheaper, a lot easier to have accomplished this. But we don't want to get into the ongoing operation of a catalytic system. There's a lot of control problems that we're trying not to do. We're trying to get away from that. And where we were asking for some indulgence was the fact that we are removing the air pollution source completely by going to electric.
Mr. Herlock, I'll second that. They are taking a big leap here and doing really more than they really have to do by electrifying. There will be an added benefit to the air quality of Ventura once they fully electrify.
Question for the district. Mr. Duval, would they be eligible for any Carl Moyer funding if they have any money problems putting
We've
this all
already
together?
talked about that. Carl Moyer is geared towards the heavy-duty diesel.
Right.
So because they're natural gas, there's no Moyer funding available for that. That was already explored.
There's no members of the public here tonight, so there's no public comment. none of the board members or the petitioner or respondent have any comments, I'd like to close the hearing.
I would move the order as modified, unless there's further comment. The modifications would be in paragraph 13 of the stipulated findings of fact, in which subpart 3 referencing Rule 74.9 is deleted, and on that same page, yeah, I'm trying to find that. Paragraph 7, paragraph 7 on the stipulated conditions, which is on page 5 of 6, that be the newer version that was presented to us tonight, modifying natural gas consumed by and substituting hours of operation of. With those two changes, would move the stipulated conditional order of abatement approved.
Motion? Or a second?
Want to second it?
Second.
So we have a motion as clarified by Ms. Nicewinder, seconded by Mr. Stubblefield. Sorry. Could the clerk please poll the board?
Ms. Nicewinder,
Aye.
Mr. Stubblefield,
Aye.
and Mr. Hurlock.
Aye. So the petitioner, your petition is granted. And is there any further business for the board outside of this case tonight?
I believe we are scheduled to have an interim hearing maybe around June 5th, I believe it is. And then sometime in July, the regular hearing for that. And that's all.
I sent my calendar to Chris, I think it was yesterday or so.
Okay, she's on vacation this week, but she'll be back Thursday.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Duval, you
Yes.
had mentioned that there was a possibility of a new member for my position, actually.
I need to advertise, you might say, for your
okay.
position, but haven't done that yet.
So you're stuck with me?
Actually, a couple of things. First of all, I would like to introduce from my staff. This will probably be the last meeting you'll see of me, not unless one of my staff isn't able to, but it's Jeff Stinnett is mostly who you'll be as your main clerk for the moment, and then Catherine Pierce will be his backup.
What's your last name, Jeff? Stinnett.
Jeff.
Jeff?
Yes, and Catherine.
And Catherine.
Pierce. And then just a question to your comment about, are you resigning or is your term over?
No, my term is apparently over.
Okay.
But I was just wondering if anything had gone further on that.
Okay.
You're out for